Oh, hi, welcome to Thinking Green. That crept up on us. Hi, I'm Rana, and before I introduce tonight's guests, I just have a couple of events to announce. Tomorrow at Waterford Library at 7 p.m., there is going to be a panel discussion that is sponsored by the ACLU, and it's on electoral dysfunction and some possible solutions. And two of the panelists are Luther Weeks and Caleb Klepner, who have both been on this show and who have very different views on how to fix the current electoral system. So it should be very interesting. And on Saturday in New Haven, on the Green, there's going to be a solidarity event in opposition to the Keystone Pipeline from 10 to noon. So I think they're on the calendar, but you'll get the first word here. So my guests tonight are Will Vanderbilt, Bob Burns, and Megan Erhart. And the subject is going to be genetically engineered food in every dimension you can imagine. We have almost an hour to talk about it. So welcome all of you.
Thanks.
Do you want to one at a time just talk about how you got involved in educating and being an activist for GMO labeling and other GMO-related issues?
Sure.
You can start, Will.
I'd be happy to start. So my name is Will Vanderbilt, and I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch. I think I come from a fundamental belief that people in society have a right to know what's in their food and a right to decide what it is that they're eating. And I, as an organizer, also believe that people and democracy is best utilized when people take part in it. So my original, orientation to GMOs was from the side of understanding that the food system that we have right now is broken. It's controlled by a very specific number of companies who are able to really control everything that you can buy on the store shelf. And their motivation is directly related to their profit.
And not related to our health.
And absolutely not related to our health. And I just think that's wrong. I'm not happy with the state of the food system, and I want to change that. And I think that one of the best ways right now that we as individuals and as consumers and citizens can fight for change in our food system is by fighting GMOs and fighting specifically for labeling these ingredients and these plants and other products that have had no safety testing and that we don't even know are okay to be putting in our bodies, but that require no labeling.
At least in the United States.
At least in the United States. 62 other countries do require labeling.
Yeah, so we're not really number one in every aspect.
Absolutely not. But it's a fairly, I've only been involved in this issue for, the last year. And I've just been so excited by how much support there is for it when we just start to talk to people about GMOs and start to tell them and educate them about the potentially harmful consequences of eating and consuming these foods, and sharing with them the, I just think, incredibly alarming fact that none of them are labeled.
Right. And so we don't even know if we're at risk or not.
No, we're really in the dark.
Now, by contrast, Bob, you've been involved in food activism in a way for a long time. So how did you get to this table?
Well, I guess I started in 1948. My dad had a dairy farm in Ledyard. I grew out in California for a while when I first heard about GMOs. Actually, there was an organic conference at Asilomar conference, and I heard Miguel Altieri, he was the head of environmental sciences, gave the first report I'd ever heard on genetically modified foods. And a lot of people are frightened of nuclear energy and stuff like that. Well, when I work my garden, I look at the microbial activity to see if everything's online, and I'm sort of into the little world. And when I heard that there were actually people who were not sensitive to the reality of the world we live in, that try to create heaven and earth in a laboratory, I really got frightened. And so I became an activist in California. We were successful in shutting down 5 counties. No GMO. County boards were voting unanimously to keep them out. And this was based on the environmental scientists in those days. Subsequently, 5 years thereafter, Monsanto came in with big bucks, giving free seed to farmers, and more or less all the counties in California today, except one, Tulare County, which is all organic farmers, is still non-GMO. Today in Connecticut, ironically enough, I was at the Denison Farmers Market and discovered that the Denison Society was leasing land to Monsanto. And as a farmer, my reason for being an activist in this, that every single bit of legislation that comes out of Washington from senators and congressmen is engineered to stamp out and snuff out small farmers, engineered to stamp out and snuff out gardeners with what they call the food safety regulations, making it almost impossible for us.
Sure, we saw that with the whole raw milk issue in Connecticut a year or so ago.
That was one. And they had a victory. However, the Department of Health and Environmental and the Consumer Protection are harassing these organic distributors like Baldwin Brook Farm, so forth and so on. But because they are trying to snuff us out, I am trying to organize farmers. And I guess quickly I'll
Sure.
go over this, that in the country today, there's this massive non-GMO movement that's going on. This is going to be an event that's going to be held at Whitegate Farms, and it will be on May 3rd, on a Friday. And I don't know, can you...
Yeah, 5 p.m.
Can
And
you
Whitegate Farm is
that?
up on Upper Patagonia Road in
East
Lyme.
Lyme. Yes, and it's one of the most beautiful organic farms in the state. But there's a massive reaction. There's over 6 million American consumers that want labeling but are not getting it. So they want non-GMO food. So there's part of a market. The European buyers of all our product, of all our soy, of our corn, of our rice, they want non-GMO. So basically, in the marketplace, the GMO flag and all their whatever they were is being slaughtered in the marketplace, and we're all a part of that, and it shows that democracy works at least in the marketplace.
Well, you know, I'd like to see people using economic clout because, you know, this is a capitalistic country economically, and sometimes it seems you can be more effective with your buying choices than by talking to your politicians. So, you know, a demand, you know, just disappears and no one wants to buy, you know, grow it for any reason.
Right.
So Megan, how did you get involved with this?
So I'm volunteering with Food and Water Watch, and I guess I initially became interested from a health standpoint. I care a lot about health and nutrition, and I think regardless of whether or not GMOs are harmful, we should have a choice about what we put in our bodies, and you know, until they're labeled, we can't do that.
No, because things that are organic are going to be non-GMO, but you don't always necessarily want to or are able to make the organic choice, but still not want GMO.
Right, not everyone wants to buy organic, so I think people should have choices about buying GMOs that are not organic.
Well, it's interesting that the approach now is towards labeling, and I know that might be a step towards reducing demand for GMO products in general, but even very conservative people are often in favor of labeling because, you need to be informed to be able to make decisions for yourself. And I was saying before the show that a pre-presidential election debate, Gary Johnson, the libertarian who pretty much wants to dismantle government, still was in favor of GMO labeling because people have the right to have the information they need to make decisions. Let's back up just a little bit and not assume that everyone who's watching knows exactly what's referred to when we say GMOs or GE foods. So maybe whoever wants to can jump in and kind of give some background information about what it is.
Well, one thing is that Monsanto's argument, or the biotech industry, I mean, it's all one, DuPont, Novartis, Bayer, they're all in it together. Their argument is that genetic engineering's been going on for years. One time at a debate we had in Santa Barbara, the Monsanto rep made that statement, and I was at the other side of the debating table, and I said, "Oh, do you have a copy of the Egyptian gene gun?" Right? But the idea is there are certain conditions where actually genetic changes do take place in a harmonious condition. They call it hybridization, no question about it. But what the biotech industry does is they create perverse situations. For instance, all of you listeners, what you want to do is call the Monsanto facility in Mystic and tell them that you want to invest in growing corn and you would like to see their facility. And that's the best way that I direct people, just to go there and look at it. But what they do is they use pathogens, they use viruses, they use radiation. At that particular facility, they use the radiation to kill the corn, because if you inject the corn with a virus, the seed, the enzymes and the life of the seed will reject it. So they almost kill the corn with radiation. They hit it with a virus, allow the virus to get strong enough, and then let the corn come back, and that corn becomes Roundup-resistant corn. That's one technique. But all these pathogens and mutations that are used, particles of that are carried over into the food system. So we are ingesting part of that. Cows are ingesting part of that. So that whole process is dangerous. They argue the levels of danger aren't sufficient enough, to label or to talk about. So that's their argument. But it's an insidious, horrendous thing they do to our natural world.
And with the Roundup Ready corn, that's setting it up that if you eat it, you know that it's been sprayed with Roundup.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
what's interesting about Roundup doesn't kill like if you put gasoline on the grass.
Right.
What Roundup does is through chelation, it destroys the plant's resistance to fungi. So when you spray with Roundup, the fungi is stimulated. In fact, there are different species and varieties of fungi that are stimulated by this. Recently, I'm buying some organic product from a dealer, and when I make wheatgrass, I noticed that in the bottom of the wheatgrass was fungi. So I called him and I said, "I'll bet you that field you're growing in was a Roundup field before, wasn't it?" And he says, "Yes. The farmer grew corn in it because that fungi is stimulated." Yeah, and that's part of what Roundup does to our environment.
Now we're hearing a lot about BT. Is that also corn?
Yeah, so BT corn is corn. It's the second type of genetically modified product that's really pervasive in our food system right now. And BT corn is corn that's been genetically modified to produce its own toxin in every single cell. And it is an insecticide. It kills the bugs that would grow on that corn when they eat it. So when you think about it, I just think it's crazy. We're feeding ourselves corn that has an insecticide in every single cell of the plant.
And I remember hearing 30 years ago that BT was considered a fairly natural control for some, like if you had a rain barrel and you didn't want mosquitoes to breed in it. But that was in a very limited setting, I guess. I guess one of the questions I have also, if you have BT corn, so you don't have the insects eating it, what happens? Does it affect other insects than the ones you necessarily want to kill or starve out?
I'm an organic farmer, and I use BT, all right? All of us do. And you spray. And the reason we can use it is when it's alive, it attacks the gut of the insect. It also attacks their eggs.
It's like a bacterial disease,
their
right?
eggs, it's alive, but in 24 hours it dies. What Monsanto does, and you're not going to believe this, they create a plant where an ear of corn, if you bite into it, you're actually eating a live, full-on insecticide. Now,
wow.
At the State House, at the hearing, there were some Monsanto people there. We were having a little talk. And I said that I had seen a 6-year-old take a bite of the BT corn. His neck got red. He started to gag and had to be taken to the hospital because it was raw. His mother didn't see him. He didn't know. And so the response I got from Monsanto, because they always have a response, one of the women there said, she said, I took a bite of that corn, it didn't bother me. So I told that story. The Monsanto response was, oh, the kid probably had an allergy. All right? Well, you know, so does the bugs have allergies because they die from it. You know, I guess we all have allergies. But that's a type of logic they use. In other words, they're not sensitive to the real world at all. They just go in and smash and bang and slam, and 6 million people in America are aware of this, and this is what the labeling is all about.
Well, one thing, I talked to some, I've never done the Monsanto tour myself, but I've heard from...
It's fun.
You probably go as a heckler, right?
Yeah. No, you call them up and say, this is Mr. So-and-so for such and such a corporation. I want to invest in your corn.
And then you find out the whole deal.
Then you look at it and you see it, then you can tell people, yeah.
Well, I remember seeing that it's not a very exact science. You mentioned the gold dust gun, that they just kind of splatter the genes. Yeah, the gene gun. They just splatter it out there. It isn't like they're doing brain surgery and splicing things in. Yeah. And I kind of remember seeing pictures of different ears of corn that had the same foreign genes spliced in different locations in the DNA, and the effects were quite different. So I'm guessing that your result is not really that necessarily safe or consistent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what you're getting at is that this is unproven science.
Yeah.
And the science that Monsanto has done just hasn't been tested on the general population. So this food that they're putting out into our food system has really never had a long-term study on adults to prove that it's safe. And yet they're putting it on our shelves without any label or any knowledge that they're giving us to show that we can eat it.
So I guess we're the test, right?
I mean, we're all lab rats.
We're guinea pigs, right?
And I think that's so horrifying, and that just that very fact is a great example of it.
Well, when you, Bob, mentioned that the way to get in is to say you're interested in investing in the corn. You mentioned something about starting out giving out free seed, and then people kind of get hooked on using their seed because you can't save the seed from year to year.
Well, in the beginning, as a farmer, when the Monsanto rep comes, now I went to demonstrate at a Monsanto event. We were going there, and we had to sit in the audience. We had our banners all rolled up. It was going to be a surprise out in the lobby. I sat there, and I swear, as I sit here, when that CEO got done, I was on board with them. I mean, they have a way of getting into your head and manipulating, and they do that to all our senators and all our congressmen in Washington. Rob Simmons today is with us for labeling. And he carries a bottle of Hunt's ketchup with him wherever he goes, and he holds it up and he says, $24 billion, he'll say. And then he turns it around and he says, I don't know if this is genetically modified or not. And he says, you know what they say? They can't afford it. I mean, but the thing is, when I knew Rob when he was a senator, a congressman, Rob was telling me how good GMOs were because he was impacted by that slickness, that they push, and I don't want to call it magic, but they really know how, because I sat there And you know, I really believed. And as I walked out the door, I remembered we were going to have a demonstration out in the lobby. You know?
Yeah, well, it kind of speaks to how a lot of political decisions are made, because those companies do have a lot of money. They can pay PR people, they can pay lobbyists, and for the most part, the effort on the other side is largely a couple of people who are paid but not too well, and a lot of volunteers. And it's not really a level playing field.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about things we do know a little bit about, how GMOs impact the environment, or impact people's health, or impact the life of farmers.
Yeah. Well, I'd be happy to start with the environment.
Sure.
You know, GMOs, by definition, are the largest source of GMOs, which is Roundup Ready plants, are an incredible toxin on the environment, and a result that, you know, the whole point of the crop is to use more herbicides. And the use of GMOs has resulted in a corresponding increase in herbicide use across the country. And that's not just herbicides that are going into the ground, but they go into our water supplies. They contaminate other crops and other fields, and they end up in our bodies. And we think that that's wrong, and we believe that reducing that pesticide use is a good cause in and of itself.
And coincidentally, the Roundup Ready corn and the Roundup itself are both manufactured by Monsanto.
Exactly. So it's a closed system designed entirely to benefit their bottom line and to give them a profit.
Now, Bob, you mentioned a little bit about the effect on small farmers in particular with this sort of farm policy we have.
Yeah. I don't really want to mention names, but there was a congressperson in Connecticut that did a food safety bill. And that bill was designed to wipe out every single small farmer in the state. Now, this political congressperson waves the flag of being for agriculture. And I'll tell you about infiltration. I read the testimony of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, and the testimony was why the Department of Agriculture does not support labeling. A paragraph in that testimony, because I've been fighting Monsanto since the 90s, was straight out of Monsanto. In other words, our Connecticut Department of Agriculture is taking a partisan position in supporting genetically modified organisms and the GMO policy. And if you don't believe me, you can Google the responses to House Bill
6519
and look up the statement from the Connecticut Department of Agriculture and look at it. There it is in black and white. Hardcore evidence. And that's a problem we have. And that problem is holding back Connecticut farmers from getting in on this this non-GMO movement, which is national, which is thriving, which Wall Street investors are looking at, and our own farmers are being held back by that stigmatism and dogmatism of the marriage of Connecticut agriculture with these GMO, seed salesmen and slick and fancy guys. And it's really hurting our farmer. But that bill was designed that bill was written that food producers, and that would include you if you grew one tomato plant in your backyard.
Which I plan to.
Yeah. Had to be licensed to be inspected by the federal government. The fee of the licensing, according to the bill, could run as high as $5,000. Of course, for agribusiness, that's not a problem.
Right.
But that will knock out all the little farms, and you can visualize these inspectors coming around telling, well, you can't have a garden, so forth and so on. But that insidious behavior was written into law. And so when I politically notified that particular person's organization that this was going on, I was attacked as being hostile. Finally, we got an amendment to it you know, to allow small farmers, you know, to allow home gardeners and so forth and so on. But that bill was honed and written by Monsanto. There's no question about it. You know, you've been doing this long enough. As soon as their rhetoric comes up, you can spot it a mile away. And they've got the grip. But as you say, and it's interesting too, I have a confession to make. Years ago, during the Vietnam War, I was for fighting for socialism. I mean, that was because I wanted to have a revolution, because the Democrats didn't want one, the Republicans didn't want one, and I wanted one.
Yeah, but all of us young folks did, right?
But today, what I realize is, later on in life, that what socialism doesn't have, the rhetoric's good, caring for one another, loving one another, working together, but what capitalism has, and this is kind of neat, it has this little escape valve called the marketplace. That if things get too hot and too heavy, for instance, like Hitler's party was a National Socialist Party, you know, it kind of locks you out of that. It's kind of beautiful what's happening here. What's happening here is that little valve is spreading out and allowing us this beautiful opportunity to, as you said before, in the marketplace, we will decide whether Monsanto lives or dies.
Well, and on that point, on that note, we have about a 5-minute break for the community calendar. When we come back, we'll talk more about actions that are currently happening and ways to get involved to do something about it. And you can feel free to call in if you have any questions, comments, want clarifications. And are we ready, or I'm ready if you all are.
I can't hear him. Can I have your mic?
That's an exciting question, isn't it? But you know, that's what.
Some people suicidal. Oh no, another soul is lost control. Pull him back into the fold. He got strung out on the material, all the superficial initials upon his clothes. They make me wanna go spree. Well, every time I see my family locked in jail, the economic can be demonical. Oh, keep loving the soul, no matter where I roam. Well, no, every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. No matter where I roam. Well, no, every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. You see, people are so beautiful in love. That's why I'm reminded of life's precious moments every time I see lovers walking by the park. Close my eyes and I stop reminisce. See a little baby sucking on his mama's milk. The silky smoothness of a loving caress, holding baby to breast, and blessing the world with another to test. Oh yes, bang bang. I like to sing a little song dedicated to the people who would like to sing along. Cause every little song has little beats and notes, like every little lake has little trees and boats. All people deserve a safe and warm home, cause every single soul is a home, no matter where I roam. Well, no, every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. No matter where I roam. Well, no, every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. I want to show you something beautiful. It's lovely, it's lovely. world torn apart. A baby's love, these fingerprints upon the heart. So many thinking, but never saying. Why bring a child to this planet full of hatred? They might not make it like the youngest departed. But worst of all, they might become a part of it. Files in it, perpetuating violence, violence, growing in silence. Seeing things they don't know how to deal with, and learning ways to try to cope with it, cope with it, cope with it. But not lose hope no matter where I roam. Well, I know every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. No matter where I roam. Well, I know every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. No matter where I roam. Well, I know every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. No matter where I roam. Well, I know every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. Come on, y'all. Yeah. Sounds good, y'all. Hell yeah. It's lovely, it's lovely. I'm starting to feel something here, y'all. That's what I'm saying. I'm starting to feel something. What you feeling? I want to show you something. I want to show you something. Show me something. It's lovely, it's lovely. Come on, y'all. It's lovely, y'all. So no matter where I roam, y'all. Every single soul is a poem. It's written on the back of God's hand. So no matter where I roam, show you something beautiful.
Welcome back to Thinking Green. I'm here with Will, Bob, and Megan. And I hope we didn't scare you totally with the first half, but there's been a lot going on this past winter and upcoming into spring. So Megan, do you want to tell us about some of what's been going on and how people can get involved?
Sure. So people around the state have been petitioning on this issue this spring. We have over 1,500 signatures, and we've been asking those people to call their representatives and write letters just to really let our legislators know that there's a lot of support behind this issue. We've also had volunteers around the state having house parties about discussing this, screenings of movies like Genetic Roulette. And we now have a bill number, it's HB 6519. There was a hearing in the Public Health Committee last Friday in Hartford. Over 100 people from around the state came out in support of the bill. Jerry from Ben Jerry's was there, and that was fun. And yeah, and we also, and in addition to coming down to support the bill, people just, we had people go up and visit their representatives, sort of talk to them about why the issue is personally important to them. So we're waiting for a vote in the Public Health Committee now.
Now, you said there were like 100 people there. Mm-hmm. Was it a really long day?
200. Sorry.
200. Well, so I remember seeing on Facebook someone I knew who was there who was asking someone to bring them a sleeping bag or something. Did it go, did the, I don't know if they're festivities exactly, but did the activities go on into the evening?
Well, yeah, people were testifying really late. I'm not sure how late exactly.
10 o'clock.
I think
10 o'clock,
okay, yeah.
11:30.
I saw on Facebook that someone testified at 2:30 a.m., so that's dedication.
Yeah, and I'm sure those are all recorded. I hope some of the committee members were still there listening.
Absolutely, and you can actually go read all of the testimony for the bill online on the Connecticut Legislature's website.
And CTN usually does provide tapes also. I'm not quite sure how to access them, but it's good to be able to go back and see what people said. So when will we know if it's been voted out of committee?
25th. It's a date, right? Is it?
So that's like next
Our best
Monday.
Yeah. So within the month, we expect it to be brought out of the Public Health Committee, and we do expect the Public Health Committee to vote positively for it. But then the real question is, where does the bill go next? And that's really up to the leadership of the Connecticut legislature and the powers that be. So we do expect it to go back to at least one or two more committees before it will be brought to the floor for a vote.
So it doesn't sound like it's too late for people to get in touch with their legislators or to also see what legislators are on the relevant committees and particularly get in touch with them.
Absolutely not. No, there are dozens of ways to get involved. But I think the easiest thing for someone to do right now is just to write a simple letter to their legislator in your own hand on a sheet of paper. Don't type it up. Because we think it's even more powerful. When you write it out in your own hand, put it in an envelope, address it to them, and put a stamp on it. You should get a response. Another way that they can take action right now is to make a phone call. Even if their legislator isn't on the Public Health or the Environment Committee, they can still help us co-sponsor the bill and champion this bill to really just raise the drumbeat and raise the pressure in the Capitol around labeling.
Now, are you also looking for people to write like letters to the editor to their newspaper or opinion pieces or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. We have like a list of relevant articles, and we're encouraging people to write letters to them. If anyone wants to, they should get in touch with me.
Oh yeah. Okay, contact information. Would be really good thing to share.
Okay, yeah, so my email, email me if you want to write a letter to the editor. It's moerhart@gmail.com.
And there's also, now what will people find if they go to GMO Free Connecticut, CT?
Yeah, so GMOFreeCT.org has been just sort of the hub of activity here in the state for the spring. And they have been hosting an incredible array of events, movie screenings, talks, and others, just small gatherings. So if you go to GMOFreeCT.org, you can find a letter writing template. You can find instructions on how to call your legislator, as well as a calendar of events of things that are coming up in the future where you can get involved, come see a movie, have some simple discussions, ask questions, and even take action with us.
Okay, GMO Free CT, and I don't know if we put that up. And okay, let's talk about some of the events that are coming up that we want people to
in line
participate
with that,
in.
if you can see this, we have this will be on April 2nd at the Ledyard Middle School. It's on the corner of Route 12 and 214, right where the United Way office is in back of there. And at this event, we'll have former Congressman Rob Simmons. We will have Senator Kathy Austin, our new senator who replaced Edith Prague. We'll have Bill Dusing, who is the executive director of NOFA. And we'll have Ian Scoggard, who is the chair of the Green Committee, United Council Churches of Christ. And here's an interesting thing that I want to share with you, that being a Green station, I'm chair of the Green Committee at the Ledyard Congregational Church. And the Green Committee and United Christ Council of Churches submitted a resolution based on Scripture, and that resolution was presented and voted on unanimously at their last conference for all the churches in the state of Connecticut to hold informal sessions regarding genetically modified food. And this is a real strong force. It's a spiritual force. And Ian is a professor of divinity at Yale. And he's a very interesting guy. He knows, like a lot of the clergy in the state. And so soon in Hamden, Connecticut, we're going to have a panel discussion similar to this one in the churches there in that particular district. So that's really important, the spiritual aspect. And our minister, who ironically enough was a former biologist, and at first when we started was kind of hesitant to what we were doing because she's supportive of the science.
Right.
Today, she gave a sermon that said that science and spirituality are the same, and that what we need to do is to go back to our roots in agriculture. It was a beautiful sermon. So
That is interesting.
She's on board with us now too, yeah. And the clergy is very important. I'm a Buddhist monk myself who happens to like Christianity a great deal, but there's a lot of power in the spiritual understanding of this, because what Monsanto is doing essentially is in violation of all the spirituality that we know on earth that's ever been taught to us. It's in violation of the order of the universe. This is why they can't have success, because they're in violation of natural law. And after all, no matter how clever you are in a laboratory, it's natural law that will govern.
Well, it is interesting that in Southeast Connecticut, the Peace and Justice Network, which has a strong connection with a lot of the liberal clergy in the area, have been really on the forefront. You mentioned that you and Ann Scheibner had worked together on this subject, and I think it was before the 2004 and the 2008 presidential elections when people from this Peace and Justice Network were thinking about their issues. Genetically modified food was always on the list. So now, can people, if they don't have time to write letters, is there a place they can donate? This is a nonprofit organization, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think GMO-Free CT has a donate button on their website.
Okay, so if
you
people...
can always donate to Food and Water Watch if that's what you believe in, but this effort is really being led at the state level. It's a state issue.
By GMO-Free CT.
One of the things that excites me about this movement, and I've been a political activist all my life, I can't help it. I mean, if I see injustice, I just don't like it. But this particular movement has such an organic, natural thing, because what it's got in it, it's got a lot of individual leaders who are organizers, who are close to their community, that are, taking initiative. And we had a meeting one time and said, well, we need to send Monsanto a trophy for bringing us together, because we really like each other. And what we realize is that if we get the labeling done, that as a group, we're going to stay together, to do other things.
Well, that is a step.
To make
but
change.
It's not necessarily the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's wonderful how an adversary sometimes, is key to building something beautiful. And that's what's happened. I mean, as detrimental and as negative as you want to see Monsanto, it's the adversary that's given birth and rise to probably nationally one of the biggest movements that this country has ever known, is this labeling movement. And the people involved are balanced, lucid, clear, and it's really a wonderful thing. And without Monsanto, we couldn't have it.
Well, to me, in some ways, it just seems like such a sensible thing. You mentioned that in Europe they don't want to import the U.S. GMO grain. A lot of the world is ahead of us on this.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with the United States? Is it just the influence of corporations on the laws? Or, is there any other reason? I don't know.
Well, we've lost our spirit. I mean, if you look at American history, I mean, look from 1900 on. Every American was alive and out in the streets and fighting. And I grew up in the 50s, and I will tell you this: it's my generation, I think, that gave birth to laying a blanket, over America. That stopped because we had it made. Because all the fighting that our fathers did, in the streets, shedding their blood to make this a better country. You know, in the 50s, we were living high off the hog. You know, working class, 2 cars in every garage. Most of the bills were, it was nice. Happy days, right? And I was a union steward back in those days, and I said, come on, we got to go to the union meeting. Oh, Bob, I got to watch the game, you know what I mean? And slowly, gradually, all those gains, you know, had been eroded. So what's happened is, ironically enough, you know, the labor union's essentially been busted. Did you know the Teamsters Union supports the pipeline? That's going to put millions of truck drivers out of work.
They supported Broadwater actually 10 years ago, so I'm not surprised.
Millions of railroad workers out of work, right? I mean, you know, so essentially the union movement in America is dead. But this food movement, you know, is not, that we all have to eat. And it's actually a deeper, more passionate movement amongst individuals. And the power behind what we have, the dynamic of it, even exceeds the labor movement. And it's very, very interesting.
So again, if someone's watching this and they feel stirred up and they want to get involved, what would you recommend they do?
I think the easiest and quickest thing they can do is call their representative and tell them that they want them to support the labeling bill this year. That's a great first thing to do. It'll take 5 minutes. And it's so easy to look up your representatives online, make sure you have the right phone number, and just give them a quick phone call. The second way and best way to get involved, I think, is to join us at this panel on April 2nd at the Ledyard Middle School. It'll be a great informational panel. There'll be lots of people there ready to get them involved and bring them into the fold and plug them into a volunteer or leadership opportunity that fits with their schedule.
And also something that excites me is that in a state, we as citizens, we can control our futures. You know, there's people in my town that say, oh, Bob, he hobnobbed with the senator and the congressman. That attitude is lethal and un-American. The attitude is those representatives want to hear what we have to say. And what this movement's doing, and why I encourage people to come to this, they can hear Senator Austin, they can hear former Congressman Rob Simmons, they can hear these people who represent us and become one with that, and we can impact and change, and we can predict our future by getting involved.
Yeah, so they really do represent us.
They do, and they want to. I mean, when you call them or you get in contact, they're not going to shine you on. They want to hear what you have to say, because you're not only the vote, but you're why. In other words, we're the reason why they got into politics in the first place.
Now, what's happening in other states? Are there states other than Connecticut who are walking the same path right now?
Well, as you probably know, California this fall was the source of a huge blow-up, I think, of GMO labeling with Prop 37. Which was defeated just as a result of the sheer amount of money that was spent on the other side in misleading advertising. But I think that's really been beneficial to us in the long run because it's inspired an incredible amount of people to start taking action and coming out on this issue. You know, there have been people advocating for GMO or against GMOs and for GMO labeling for years, but only now are we really seeing this groundswell of support that is, you know, universal. I haven't talked to anybody on this campaign this spring that's been, you know, an outright no, except for the lobbyists that were in Hartford,
Right.
and I think that paints the picture perfectly.
Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time. Do you want to give people the details again for the event in Ledyard? I think it was April 5th at Ledyard Middle School.
It's I'll read it. It's Tuesday, April 2nd.
Oh, April.
At 6:30 p.m. at the Ledyard Middle School, which is, you go down out of New London, go down Route 12 like you're going towards Norwich. It's right at the junction of 214.
Okay.
It's where the United Way hall is. It's behind there. And also, this event is sponsored by farmers. It's sponsored by Cedo Meadow Farms, Hidden Brook Gardens, Highland Thistle Farm, Whitegate Farm, Studio Farms, Stony Ledge Farms, and of course, Ike Farms.
Of course. Well, thank you for being on the show. I hope people got roused up and will be writing. Next week, Michael Harris will be the host of the show, and it's going to be about blocking the XL pipeline. So tune in then, and we'll see you at these meetings all around town.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and good luck with all your endeavors.
We appreciate it.